Great Horn Email Security protects organizations from advanced threats such as impersonations, credential theft, and zero-day attacks. With Great Horn, you will detect and block more phishing threats from reaching users, reduce risk by providing employees with in-the-moment education, and quickly remove dangerous emails from inboxes in just 2 clicks. Great Horn protects your organization before, during, and after an email attack. Schedule a demo by visiting securityweekly.com/greathorn. When it comes to modernizing identity, Active Directory just makes everything harder, from managing access for contractors and departing employees to securing cloud apps and on-prem systems. Your company deserves better. Choose Okta, the modern identity platform that securely connects anyone that touches your organization to any technology they want to use. Okta reduces AD vulnerabilities, secures not only employees but contractors and customers, simplifies domain consolidation, and reduces your attack surface. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/Okta. Security can't solve crucial problems when they have to wade through thousands of alerts a day. With ServiceNow, you can easily prioritize and respond to your most crucial business threats. That way you can go from overwhelmed to under control. ServiceNow brings security, risk, and IT together on one platform. Learn more at securityweekly.com/ServiceNow. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. A quick announcement before we get started. Attend RSA. That's right, I said RSA. It's early this year. In 2020, it's February 24th through the 28th. Join thousands of security professionals for forward-thinking innovations and solutions providers for 5 days of actionable learning, inspiring conversation, and breakthrough ideas. Register before January 24th and save $900 on a full conference pass. Save an extra $150 with the code, is that 50USWKLYFD? We're getting a better code than that, I think Matt said. So we'll put it's in the show notes as well, wiki.securityweekly.com, but make sure you do that. That's a significant discount and a lot of fun things happening at RSA. A lot more technical training than you may think. We usually do a segment to cover that. So get on, start thinking about RSA now, because again, it's early. Let's see. Our interview for this segment is Brendan O'Connor. From Fortune 500 to education from startup to running a consulting firm, Brendan's experience in information security has served him well. It all started with his boss speaking out loud about how they needed to get someone to handle security. Usually when you say that, they're like, okay, that's you. Have at it. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
And Brendan, today you work for an insurance company called Root Insurance, which I think is an awesome name, and you're an Automox customer, which brings you to the show to talk about it. Did I get all that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Yes, Root Insurance definitely uses Automox, so I'm happy to be here. Ready to talk.
So Brendan, give us a background on Root Insurance. I didn't know Root Insurance, so I went out and did a little research, and you guys have an interesting approach to insurance. So explain to our listeners first, because I think it sets up the story around patching and some of the things that you were struggling with at Root.
Absolutely. Root Insurance is an innovative company that looked at a problem that the industry was seeing and decided to solve it. The problem is that most people are getting insurance based on who they are, somewhat where they live, their age, all factors that really shouldn't matter. The only thing that should matter is how good of a driver you actually are. So Root took mobile and built an app around it to determine speed, braking, turning, all the things that the sensors in a phone actually have readily available to pick up on. There's the GPS, there's altimeters, there's accelerometers. And they use that with a lot of data science to figure out how a person was actually performing in a vehicle. And the car insurance is based on that. It's based on how good of a driver you are.
I mean, that's a pretty innovative approach, right? You basically download an app, put it on your phone, you start driving, and then based on how you drive, here's your policy and here's how much it's going to cost you. I mean, that's pretty easy. A lot better than calling up an insurance agent and having all the fun that you normally have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is very innovative. It's great to see it, them iterate on it over and over again. Every single time they get more data, they're refining their algorithms to find out what a good driver is and to make sure that they're pricing their policies correctly and saving people as much money as they can.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture behind the scenes, some of the challenges you were facing from a patching perspective, and kind of talk us through kind of some of your, some of those challenges, but then also kind of your evaluation of how to solve some of that from a technology perspective.
Absolutely. Root insurance is unique from my perspective. I have to go back 20 something years to education to find as many Macs in the environment as Root has. So we're a good mix of Macs, PC. We have a few Linux machines as well. So when it came time to look for tools to solve problems, patch management in this case, we needed a tool that could be cross OS, cross functional. It had to be able to patch all three operating systems, and it had to be able to do it not just for the OS, but for applications as well. Throw into the mix a little complication. I noticed that you had Okta as a sponsor, so shout out to them, I guess, in a way, because we're Okta customers as well. We don't have Active Directory. So when we went to look for a patching solution, it became really interesting to have a whole bunch of people come to us with their offering. And the first thing out of our mouth was, we don't have Active Directory. And that turned about 80% of them away right away.
That's interesting, Brendan. So fun. Do you have, which directory service are you using?
We use Okta.
Oh, for the directory service as well. That's awesome. I didn't know they had that. Yeah.
So it's a unique environment. Although now it seems to be much more common to not use Active Directory and just go with a cloud provider for identity.
I love it. It's awesome.
And so a lot of the patching solutions required Active Directory as a prerequisite, which ruled them out of the equation since you didn't have Active Directory in the environment?
Yes. It made it a lot easier to choose. Obviously, you had to have all three OSs. You had to do more apps than just OS. But if you didn't integrate with Active Directory, you had to have a whole nother way to do. We are also architectured in such a way that we are very cloud first. We have SaaS providers and cloud providers. I would tell you about our data center, but we don't have one. So that gives you a little taste of what we're going to put in our environment to handle patch management, which is absolutely nothing. So that was another requirement we had.
That's awesome. So, I mean, obviously, with the Automox solution being a cloud-based SaaS platform, you didn't have to worry about installing it on-prem anywhere. Supports the different operating systems that you needed, and didn't have a dependency on Active Directory. So it sounded like a perfect fit. I was just curious, were there any other solutions that met all those criteria, or was it really just Automox standing at the end of the day?
We looked really hard for a solution that can fit all of that. We tend to want to do at least 3 different vendors in a bake-off, where we test our products for a month and we come back to the table seeing if all of our requirements were met. And in this instance, exactly what you said happened when we started to look at what we really needed, what we couldn't give. Because obviously when you develop requirements, there's always a little give in 1 or 2 of them. But when we looked at the things we absolutely couldn't give on, it became obvious that Automox was the only choice that could actually do what we needed.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. I mean, there can't be. I mean, my guess is that these architectural requirements are now more commonplace, right? I mean, I get it. Legacy environments probably have legacy Active Directory hanging around, but as you think about all these new companies that are starting up, you don't necessarily need to deploy an Active Directory environment. So you're going to see a lot more of these potential scenarios out there, which means it's great for Automox in this particular case because they're the only solution that works. But you would think that the other patching solutions would kind of look at this and go, maybe we don't need Active Directory at the end of the day.
Yeah, we were really surprised to find so much trouble just even finding a vendor with a solution that we could properly evaluate. And we really looked hard because, as I said, we prefer to have bake-offs and make sure that we're getting the right solution. It was kind of stunning to us to find that nobody's doing this. But as you mentioned, it is becoming more and more popular. You're seeing more and more smaller companies starting now, G Suite customers, Okta customers, One Identity, all sorts of providers. And when they come to this point, when they're looking for a patching solution, I think you're going to see more vendors. Right now, Automox is doing a great job for us, and they're doing even more than patch management. They're doing a really bang up job for us. We like the product.
So let's talk about the deployment and the rollout. Obviously, being a SaaS provider, I know that setup's pretty easy. But where did you start your deployments? Did you focus on your server environment? I don't know if you're running like EC2 instances up in the cloud, or if you're using platform as a service where you don't need to patch, versus your workstations and maybe your kind of remote users. How did you approach the rollout?
Most of the rollout was done on laptops that the company used. The AWS wasn't so much touched. Our environment is engineered in such a way that our systems are pretty ephemeral. So putting an agent on a system doesn't work very well. But for the laptops, for the employees, the engineers, the claims, customer service, accounting, all of those people have Automox. Unfortunately, it was pretty much a brute force type of install. I guess part of that is because we actually use Automox as our deployment tool. So there's really no method to deploy your deployment tool other than touching a bunch of machines.
Right. You just pointed users to, I think, their download page and had to get the agent installed on every box, and away it went, right?
Yes, exactly. We sent out instructions that were pretty nice. We helped anybody who needed it. All new machines, of course, went out with it. But then we were using Automox to deploy everything else we needed to deploy, which was very nice.
Exactly. Now, from an OS patching perspective, obviously you've got OS patching, and I think you said some third-party patching. Did you set up custom rules, or are you using some of the default stuff out of the box? How advanced did you get when it came to the different patching rules you wanted to apply?
Well, for patching rules, we have a critical gets applied right away patching rule. The rest of it is definitely split up into groups. We have, for example, 5 Windows groups, so we can do a rolling deployment and make sure that we don't harm more than the Office than we need to. For Macs, we have similar environments for them. We do have a bunch of different rules to apply different settings for different types of machines, but largely we just have a generic rule for patching everything once we're sure that a patch is going to not harm the environment, and we'll just push it out.
Got it. So critical patches, once you know they're stable, they go pretty much right away. It sounds you're also using some of the configuration setting capabilities within Automox as well, which means you're putting specific configuration settings on the different boxes, and I assume certain third-party software enforcement as well?
Yes, absolutely. We push out password settings. We push out a screensaver. We've actually encrypted laptops using Automox. So we've used a lot of their settings. And we have pushed out other security software with it primarily. That's the only software that's fairly uniform across the enterprise. So we've used Automox to push out our security software. But we also use it to patch Adobe. We use it to patch Office, a bunch of different software.
Right. And I think this is the one thing that most people don't realize that Automox does is it's a great patching solution, but there's also a really great engine in the background that they have, the agent, that allows you to check for certain configuration settings. And then if they don't comply, you can actually set those settings. Like you said, Brendan, password settings and screensavers, et cetera, are all built into the Automox agent. So it does a lot more than just patching, which I think is what everybody thinks of Automox for first, is base OS patching, third-party software patching, but there's this great set of configuration capabilities that also exist in that agent.
Oh yeah, it's really powerful. Another thing that they do that I'm trying to get them, really talking to them about understanding how powerful the tool is, they have a complete hardware and software inventory of all the systems with an agent. So if you get agents on your computer systems throughout your enterprise, you now have a complete inventory of hardware and software. And how many companies actually have that today? It's CISSP, NIST. So many different frameworks have that as 1 and 2 on their list of what you should do. And they actually managed to pretty much achieve it.
Yeah, they do. It's one of those, again, one of those other kind of hidden capabilities that's there that You don't realize it, but you're right, because they have the agent, they have all this inventory, which is a great starting point for anybody that wants to understand, potential data classification or criticality of systems that would move into a broader kind of risk management framework. You've got a great foundation for that asset inventory right there in the product as well.
Yes, absolutely. We really use it for that. We lean on it for that. We also, one of the things that it does that I find really helpful, if you put a piece of software onto a machine and the user removes the software or the software becomes corrupt, Automox will actually sense that and reinstall it. And I think that's really great from a compliance perspective as well.
Right.
Brendan, how much time do you spend in the Automox console, like responding to patches, or is it largely automated? In other words, like, how do you track that there are new patches available and schedule a release? Like, what's the trigger, and then how much time does that take?
It's largely automated. Automox, for us, the patches appear, we send them out when they're critical automatically. The rest of them, we do our own research to determine their impact on our environment, and then we let them go. Beyond that, though, it's kind of funny. The one thing that we have the most problem with, and the Automox dashboard does show this and helps us out greatly, we find ourselves going into the app every morning and just looking at the people who haven't rebooted from the last patch cycle, and just sending them a Slack message or an email saying, hey, could you reboot? Mm-hmm. And that's really the heavy lifting, if you want to call it that.
That's awesome.
That's not much heavy lifting if the only thing you're doing is going into the interface to see what machines haven't rebooted. Because I think there's also some automatic notifications in Automox now that also tries to automate parts of that as well. Have you tried that feature yet, Brendan?
Yeah, there's a warning for the client to let them know that a patch has been applied, a reboot might be needed. And I think Automox is actually working right now on some of the language around that. So we do use that, but a lot of end users, when they get one of those little pop-ups in the bottom corner of the machine, they just tend to close it. And we still have that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a really, really good user base, and they're fantastic at things along these lines. Very, very smart, computer-savvy user base. But still, every now and then, when you have 800 people and a patch goes out to the whole company, the next morning you're going to have 40 people who missed it, didn't realize it, and haven't restarted yet.
Got it. So if you think about the amount of resources you put to the patching problem, what would that look like for root insurance? Is it half a person, a quarter of a person, a full person? I'm just curious.
I think definitely half a person. It might even be slightly less, but it's probably half a person. And a lot of it is purely just threat intelligence, looking up the patches, looking up the impact, trying to decide how it plays in our environment and our risk for that patch. Applying it and using the tool really isn't that hard.
I mean, that's great. You said, 800 employees, so you've got a half an FTE supporting patching and some level of configuration management,
yes,
for less than a half an FTE.
Yeah, it's been a really big win for us to find this tool.
Brendan, are there any integrations that you've built with it or are planning?
No, we actually had some thoughts about doing some stuff with Okta. Very, very light information on that thus far. It was just something that kind of came across our desk yesterday or the day before, Friday, I should say. So we haven't really pulled it apart and looked at what we're going to do, but we're investigating it.
Yeah, one thing I can think of, if Automox has that hardware inventory of things you know about, Okta can probably tell you that users are logging in from different machines that aren't in the inventory. I don't know if that works as an integration, but that would be my first thought. So you get basically a diff of people that are logging in from the machines you know about. Great, but here's a list of people logging in from machines that you don't know about yet, and what are they and what are the assets?
That's actually a really good idea. We might have to do that too. What we were looking at for Okta was as a source of truth, allows us to put in a field where we have converted it to a role-based identity type of functionality. So when person comes into the company and they're going to become part of the claims team, they have applications assigned to them. Those applications really, that helps us out, that whole workflow. So from a human resources perspective, somebody gets a job, they get onboarded right away without any human interaction. They've got their applications. So we were thinking about using Okta to take that one step further and classifying that machine inside Automox, putting them into a group right away based on that. So we're not, like I said, this is just some idea that hit us a couple of days ago. So nothing's done yet, but it's one of those things that really intrigued us.
Yeah, because you could also use that for the software inventory component, right? If you know there's certain applications they need to have access to, if they're cloud-based apps, great, but there could also be a set of local applications that those users need to do their function in that role that they're in, and then you could also apply policy to make sure that those get installed on the box and are there for their use, right? So that's the other potential use case there too.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking the next step. That's a natural next step.
That's great. Paul, any additional questions for Brendan while we have him?
No questions. I like the slimmed down architecture, right? I think it's a good model. Unfortunately for a lot of enterprises that have deployed Active Directory and are in a different boat, but if you can do it without Active Directory, I think it removes a lot of the headaches and a lot of the threat landscape from your environment. So,
that's true. That's one of the things that we really like. Attacks like patch the hash, where you're trying to get the local admin or you're trying to get some domain account, it simply doesn't work. If you manage to get a machine in our environment, you have an island, and there's no connectivity to the next machine to allow you to leverage, an attack style on the traditional domain.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, think about that from an architecture perspective for a second, right? You just minimize lateral movement in the environment because Active Directory is not in place, right? And so you take certain attack vectors out of the equation for the organization, but then the challenge everybody had was if you have certain solutions that relied on AD, then you kind of stuck. But here you have an architecture that is AD free, but also can do all the basic things that you need to do from a patching, configuration management, identity, etc. I just think it's a really slick architecture for people looking to keep it really lightweight.
Yeah, it's been really good for us. We really like our environment and the way that it's designed. It allows us to move very fast, which is something that Root really values to help our customers.
It's awesome. You want to take us out, Paul?
Oh, sorry. I thought there was a little bit of lag there, so I was just giving time to make sure it wasn't because of that, and we can clean that up certainly when we publish it. So, but it was good. Brendan, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. See you next time.